John here again. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to get back into our very basic Bible study, looking at the book of Judges. And we're going to be looking at chapter 4 and taking a look at another one of Israel's judges during this time period. So let's dive in. Verse 1. Then the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. Now remember, Ehud had given them victory, and at the end of chapter 3 we saw that resulted in 80 years of peace, the longest span of peace during this period of the Judges. You'd think during those 80 years, after seeing how God miraculously protected the nation, that people would have drawn closer to God, their faith would have been strengthened. But no, let's see what happens. Verse 2, and the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor, and the commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. I couldn't find the pronunciation of that location, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. But verse 3 is critical. It says, and the sons of Israel cried to the Lord, for he had 900 iron chariots, and he oppressed the sons of Israel severely for 20 years. So the sons of Israel, instead of growing in faith, growing in their relationship to God, they went right back, like we've seen so many times, and did evil in the sight of the Lord. They started worshiping the gods of the Canaanites and intermarrying, and before you know it, the Canaanites were strong enough to dominate them. And this domination was very harsh. And because this general had so many iron chariots, he could be harsh. They didn't have much recourse. But let's see what happens. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. So God had raised up this woman who had gained credibility and had been teaching the children of Israel, had been judging them, settling disputes and all that, and put her as judge over Israel. And note she was also a prophetess. Verse 5. And she used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. So people would come to her, bring their cases, so to speak, and she would decide, make decisions, settle disputes. Verse 6, now she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, behold, the Lord, the God of Israel, has commanded, go and march to Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men from the sons of Naphtali and from the sons of Zebulun. Now this mountain that she's talking about is a 1,300-foot conical mountain, and it would be easily defensible against chariots, so that'd be a good place to muster. As long as you're on the mountain, the chariots would be ineffective. Verse 7, and I will draw out to you Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his many troops, to the river Kishon, and I will give him into your hand. So God is giving Deborah the prophetess word that he is going to give them victory and finally deliver them from the oppression of this king. Now, I forgot to mention that this term, this word Jabin, is not actually a name, but it's kind of a hereditary name, like a pharaoh. So there were a lot of Jabins, and his general was Sisera. Verse 8, then Barak said to her, if you will go with me, then I will go. but if you will not go with me, I will not go. Now, this sounds a little strange to us. It sounds as if he's skeptical that she's telling him the truth or something like that, or maybe he's fearful, but I don't think that's the case. Most commentators believe that he's telling her to come along because her presence would inspire the troops. It would have a positive impact on the battle and all that. But you can't discount the other possibilities either. He might have been afraid, a little skeptical, but I think he just wanted her to go along kind of as a morale booster for the troops. Verse 9, and she said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the honor shall not be yours on the journey that you are about to take, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hands of a woman. Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. Sounds like she's going to get the credit, but we're going to read later that she's actually prophesying here about someone else. Verse 10, and Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up with him. Deborah also went up with him. So he's gathered all these troops, and they're mustering on this mountain. Now Heber the Kenite had separated himself from the Kenites, from the son of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak of Zananim, which is near Kadesh. This is kind of a precursor, giving us an introduction into this particular family, because they're going to play a role later on in other verses. Then they told Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So now the general finds out that they're mustering up. And Sisera called together all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the people who were with him, from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. So he's mustering his army. And Deborah said to Barak, arise, for this is the day which the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Behold, the Lord has gone out before you. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. So she gives the order to attack, and boom, there they go. Verse 15, and the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. And Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled away on foot. Now we're going to see in chapter 5, there's kind of a song of victory. And it mentions that there was a great downpour, a deluge. So God probably used a combination of divine intervention, bringing rains and making it muddy so the chariots would become ineffective in that kind of terrain. And other providential situations to actually provide for them to be routed. Verse 16. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not even one was left. Now Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my master, turn aside to me, do not be afraid. And he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. Now, in those days, if the man of the house was gone, man of the tent, so to speak, it was up to the wife to show hospitality. And we're going to see that this appears to be hospitable, but it turns out to be quite the opposite. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a bottle of milk and gave him a drink. Then she covered him. Again, this appearance of courtesy. Verse 20, and he said to her, stand in the doorway of the tent, and it shall be if anyone comes and inquires of you and says, is there anyone here that you shall say no? So he's given her instructions to protect himself. But Jael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg and seized a hammer in her hand and went secretly to him and drove the peg into his temple. And it went through into the ground, for he was sound asleep and exhausted, so he died. Now the women had the chore of setting up the tents as they moved around, so she was probably well acquainted with this kind of a hammer, mallet, or whatever, and the peg. And I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't knock him out first with the hammer and then drive the tent peg through him. But quite a brutal murder here. We're going to see in the next chapter this song of victory, and it kind of praises her, but clearly not a praise for the act of murder, but for the benefit to the nation by getting rid of this person. Verse 22. And behold, Barak pursued Sisera. Jael came out to meet him and said to him, come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking. And he entered with her, and behold, Sisera was lying dead with the tent peg in his temple. So this is the woman that Deborah was talking about. Actually, two women, I guess you could say, Deborah and this Jael, had caused the death of this person. Verse 23, so God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the sons of Israel. Verse 24, and the hand of the sons of Israel pressed heavier and heavier upon Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. So over time, after this victory, the Israelites become stronger and stronger, and eventually the Canaanites are rendered ineffective and no longer a threat to Israel. Well, I mentioned before in other battles that we had a king here, Jabin, that had all these chariots, and it's good to have modern weapons, you know. He had the chariots, the iron chariots. And we could say that to our country today. It's nice to have modern weaponry and latest technology, but you can't put your faith in the weapons. God ultimately is the one that's going to give the victory, and that's what happened here. God gave the victory to Israel despite their backsliding and sinning. When they turned back to God, He was faithful. He's always faithful to them. But we again could see this continued up and down situation where they believe and trust in God, and then they turn their backs on God, and vice versa. But here God gave them victory through Deborah. So now we've got another judge that we've learned about. I hope this has been meaningful to you, and I hope you'll watch the next one. In the meantime, God bless. Bye-bye.